was a meeting he held with Nigerians living in China.
The country is going through a very strong phase of reform, and this reform is taking a very bold and hard decision.
When he talks about making bold and hard decisions, do they include splurging on a presidential yacht? Do they include splurging on a presidential yacht? And Nigeria's presidential yacht was spotted in the French Riviera. Who might be coasting and holidaying with the presidential yacht when Tinubu is in faraway China on a state visit? What about the over 200 billion naira new presidential jet? Is it included in the bold and hard decisions, or is it exempted?
For example, you might be hearing from home now in the last few days about fuel prices. But can we help it? Can we develop? You use their good roads there. You see electricity being constant. You see water supply being constant and running. And you see there are good schools. And so good roads here. I want to emulate and reflect it back home.
Now, this is the big one. He's trying to justify the new petrol price increase and using China to justify why they need more money in order to develop infrastructure in Nigeria. First of all, China didn't develop this way, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Tinubu reneged on his promise. He made the promise to the NLC. That was the reason they accepted 70,000 naira minimum wage. And that promise was that the government will not increase petrol price until they negotiate again with the NLC. That negotiation was predicted to happen before 3 years. So he has reneged on his promise. Of course, the NLC already reacted to this in a statement they released. By the way, no one is yet to earn the 70,000 naira minimum wage. It has been passed into law, but implementation is yet to take off. Now, back to how China executed their economic miracle. If anyone truly wants to emulate what China did, they need to start from the basics. Remember, during the campaigns, Petrol was always referencing China while making his argument. At the end of the day, the APC guys kept mocking him for it. Today, they are in China trying to use China's economic miracle to justify increase in petrol price. But China never started this way. At the outset, even starting from way back in 1960 when Nigeria got independence, Nigeria's GDP at the time was higher than that of China. In fact, Nigeria had more economic prospects than China. This held true till about 1981 when China started picking up. Their GDP will eventually surpass that of Nigeria around the mid-80s. From there, they never looked back. Today, they are the second largest economy in the world. Besides, that time they overtook Nigeria was when Nigeria was suffering from the effects of SAP, another IMF policy that IBB regime at the time introduced to Nigeria's economy. Now, before we see the details about how China did their economic miracle and their humble beginnings, there's a stark difference from what Tinubu is implementing in Nigeria compared to what China is implementing. Despite the fact that China is the second largest economy in the world, their currency, the yuan, is still not floated. It is controlled by the government. They regulate the exchange rate. Why is it important to them? It is very important because they are an export-oriented economy. China is the world's factory. Of course, that is changing. Many companies are now looking elsewhere to manufacture their products. Countries like Vietnam, India are the major beneficiaries. The two major reasons these companies are diversifying away from China is because of, one, geopolitics. The second being that wages are increasing in China. The main reason Western companies came to China to manufacture their products in the first place was to take advantage of cheap labor. And the Chinese have become so prosperous that their wages have increased. The middle class is so large, one of the largest in the world. So that's why they are looking elsewhere, where wages are still very low compared to Western countries. By 1960, the Chinese economy was mostly agro-based, just like that of Nigeria. It was after the discovery of oil in Nigeria that our economy diversified. The Chinese also had a plan by 1960. By 1970, that their plan was already in motion and it will eventually take off the next decade. By the late 80s, they were already on a trajectory to where they are today. In order to force their country to learn how to manufacture all products, they had to ban imports into their country. The only imports that were allowed were samples of products, which was controlled by the government. They brought in these samples and reverse engineered them to learn how it worked. And from there, they started manufacturing them. Remember in the 80s in Nigeria, Nigerians used to mock products from Taiwan. At that time, people felt that even products made in Aba were better than the ones imported from Taiwan. And because the Chinese at the time didn't have any major brand that is known around the world, like Mercedes, Ford, and other major brands, they started emulating these products in order to penetrate the international market. In the 80s, most of the brand new cars sold in Nigeria were European brands. We had the Peugeot, Mercedes, and all the Volkswagen brands, Santana and the rest. Most of the car parts also came from Germany and France, European countries. But towards the late 80s, some people had already started importing car parts from Taiwan and China. And these car parts were a copy of the original brands from Germany. They worked, but not as efficient as the original. So this was why the European companies started moving to Asia and China. They saw it as the only way to stop the piracy of their products, because that time China didn't even belong to World Trade Organization. And while protecting their intellectual property, they also took advantage of Chinese cheap labor. China immediately jumped at it. Products they've been trying hard to copy and emulate, even in some cases through espionage. These companies are now bringing it into their country to manufacture them. What's not to like? These companies didn't only create employment for their people, which was needed at the time because there was massive poverty, they also now had access to their intellectual property. Yes, the Chinese went ahead and introduced new policies for foreign investors that forced them to share the intellectual property and designs of their products with local partners. It's still in operation till today. So this was how the Chinese went from an agro-based economy to a high-tech world-class economy, the second most largest economy in the world today. Can Nigeria do it? Yes, it's doable in Nigeria. Yes, it's doable in Nigeria, but before we see that, let's look at Tinubu's false premise. Before anyone can achieve China's level of development, you cannot start out by taxing Nigerians to death.
8:55, oh. Latest news, 8:55. NNPC, Aula Rodo Ikoyi.
Petrol that is refined from crude oil. Crude oil is found in Nigeria in abundance, but Nigerians cannot afford it. So these are the issues. The way they are taxing Nigerians means they want Nigerians to stop importation, because it doesn't make any sense that a merchant will pay more than 20 million naira to clear a 40-feet container and they expect products to be affordable. It's not possible. So if the government is moving in that direction, increasing the cost of everything so as to force people to manufacture locally, the question to ask is, did the government create the enabling environment for manufacturing to thrive? The answer is no. Even petrol that is refined in Nigeria by Dangote refinery is still not affordable. Crude oil that is shipped from Niger Delta to Dangote refinery, he refines it and it ends up in the filling station. Nigerians can't buy them. In terms of infrastructure, what the government needs to do is two basic things. They need to focus on creating the basic infrastructure that supports life. Yes, we have to be alive first before talking about manufacturing anything or building any factory. There must be water in abundance. There must be good roads. There must be electricity supply that is available and reliable, not the epileptic supply they supply factories and homes. The second part is developing Nigeria's abundant natural resources, which forms part of the raw materials used in manufacturing products. When we say developing natural resources, it doesn't mean they should go to China or foreign countries to invite miners to come and mine and export to their countries to use them to manufacture products which in turn will be shipped to Nigeria. No, they can do it with local companies. Just create an enabling environment. They should not focus on tax and money today. If they have their eyes on the balls, on the objective, like the Chinese did in the 70s and the 60s, it is achievable. Just work with local companies, give them all that they need to succeed, and before you know it, they will create a huge export market in Nigeria. That's how it works. You can't be telling Nigerians and others to sacrifice when you people are not even sacrificing. You cannot expect Nigerians to manufacture products after making it nearly impossible for companies to operate. How do they do it? Are they going to perform magic? To show you that it is not working, companies are already leaving, closing shop in Nigeria. So it is not working. They need to create that environment that will support local manufacturing. And now that the local manufacturing is yet to take off, customs duty shouldn't be seen as a way of generating revenue, because you already know that your country is dependent on importation. Why do you have to overtax it? If you do that, you make life unbearable for people. In order to be competitive in the international market, you need to use what you have to your own advantage to better others. You don't use what you have to disadvantage yourself. Remember one time when the world, nearly the Western world, banned Chinese steel. Yes, because they said that China was dumping steel and iron in their countries, which caused many steel companies in Western world to close down. One was sold in the UK. Many countries, they lost their steel industry to Chinese cheap imports. And when you look at it, China doesn't have iron ore. Even if they do not have to the level that they export. They buy all this iron ore from Africa and many countries. A country that buys iron ore from other countries is still able to beat other markets. So imagine if you are able to use that iron ore yourself. You will beat everyone if you do all the right things. Now, coming back to the comparative advantage that Nigeria has over China and other Southeast Asian countries, it is the geographical proximity we have to two major markets in the world, the American market and the European market. These markets buy products that are worth trillions of dollars annually. So the proximity alone, no one can beat Nigeria if Nigeria gets their act together. Why do you think most of these Western countries are against Nigeria developing? They know that we will take their jobs. Yes, China did it. Once you have products that are competitive in quality and price, you will beat others. Many factories will close down as a result, so they are aware of it. Dangote refinery alone will cause many refineries in Europe to close down. It will happen. So Nigerian leaders should stop wasting our time. All these are very simple to implement. It can be achieved. But instead of doing that, they are implementing policies that are at the advantage of other countries. How can it be? Thanks for watching.